Okay, we are live and recording. Hello everyone, it's Keith Mabbutt from the Street Soccer Foundation. I'm delighted to be joined this morning with Simon O'Connell from the Tilney Group. Simon, lovely to have you on board and joining the call. Simon actually joined the call live with his street soccer branding, and I'll be honest with you guys, I did not have this on. I just had a plain t-shirt on and I felt terrible. So straight away I pulled on a jersey to be on brand. Thank you, Simon, for that. But it's great to see you. How's your morning been?
Yeah, it's good, thanks. Yeah, been an interesting day so far. At least the sun's out now and it's a bit warmer, so it makes you feel a bit better, doesn't it? Rather than that being locked down stuck in the middle of winter and cold and raining.
Do you know, the sun makes such a difference? It's incredible, isn't it? Everyone, so many people go on about weather, certainly in Britain, it's a thing, isn't it? It's a known thing about us and our culture, but yeah, it does make such a difference when the sun is shining. Everyone seems to be much more in a better mood. But I mean, in terms of this podcast, I mean, this is the Street Soccer United podcast. We brought it back following, obviously, we drove it forward as an initiative during the lockdown. I think lockdown 1, whatever version of lockdown we're on now, 20,000, but whatever it is. But it's now on a monthly basis where we bring together fantastic valued supporters of ours, and you're very much one of those, Simon. And it's just kind of a little chat about yourself, really, you as a person, as an individual, and obviously for on behalf of Tilney as we get through the conversation. But it's more about you as a person, and you know, our audience in that sense are going to be the fantastic young people that we support throughout our academy program across the country, and anyone else obviously who comes across this podcast. Obviously we'll put it online on our YouTube channel, and obviously our friends and sponsors and partners and you know, club members, they'll come across this, no doubt. So that's the audience measure. But just want to thank you first of all for being on the call. Appreciate you're very busy man, and but we'll kick off basically. So if I may sort of run you back to when you were a young lad, it's nicer to get a bit of context about kind of how you got going with things. So do you mind sort of delving in first of all, Simon, with like what you were like as a young boy, you know, growing up? What was your kind of home environment like, and how was your upbringing?
Yeah, so I've my mum and dad were married for about 54 years. Unfortunately, my dad passed away 4 years ago, but yeah, it was just me, my mum and dad, and my sister, who's 3 years younger than me. We're complete opposites, complete chalk and cheese, but we've always got on well. It's one of those strange things, really. We're almost complete opposite ends of the spectrum. We always used to say maybe she was the milkman, but it's strange, really. We don't look alike. We're not alike at all, but yeah, we've always got on well. She lives in Greece now. She's lived over there for a few years. So yeah, growing up was very happy. My mum and dad's house is about literally 2 miles from where I live now. I've never gone too far. Still see my mum every week. So yeah, I'm very happy. I was probably always very sporty. I think my dad was very sporty. He ran a football club when he was younger. He was really into his football. He remembers sort of George Best, and you know, he was a big Chelsea fan. So he lived in he used to live between Chelsea and Fulham. So when he was growing up, he used to go 1 week to Chelsea and 1 week to Fulham. So he was a big football fan, and yeah, growing up sort of that era. So and he was always very sporty. He ran a table tennis club, and we used to play snooker. We tried everything, really. He played golf to a reasonably good standard. So we were just one of those sporty families, really. My sister picked up anything, and she won several awards at school for various different things. Athletics, she was captain of the netball team, the football, the hockey team, athletics. So I think sport was always a massive part of our life, and pretty much anything, really. We'd watch anything from World Cup, Olympics, any sport that was on, really. Me and my dad got into American football when it started on Channel 4 back in the 80s, so we were quite into that as well. So I think pretty much any sport we liked, but I suppose football was always probably our biggest interest, I guess, growing up.
And did that interest in sport kind of really bring the family together, and you kind of got on well relationship wise, typically, you would say?
Yeah, I guess so, because we probably we weren't overly competitive. I used to quite like just playing the game, really. And people say, "Oh, you're competitive." I said, "No, I just enjoy playing or watching." I was probably more of a watcher than player. But what was funny is we started off playing a bit of snooker. And there was a local snooker club, and then when I was probably, I don't know, 13, 14, we had a few games. And so my dad took me to a local club, and we quite enjoyed it, and we became a member. And I said, "Oh, let's just keep a record." So first, you know, maybe best of 10 or something. And we kept that going for about 20 years. It was funny. We had about 1,000 games in the end. And it used to make us laugh because I had this big book, and it started off as a bit of a joke, but it ended up being about we were quite even. We ended up something like about 250 each or something, or around that number, about 500 matches, but well over 1,000 games, because we used to play best of 3 or best of 5, and we did that for probably 20 years when I was growing up. So it used to make us laugh, really, when it starts off a bit of fun, best of 5 or something, and ends up being a bit bigger than that.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I mean,
and I played table tennis as well. Sorry, because my dad played table tennis for a club, and he ran the club. So
yeah.
We used to have a table at home. So I played table tennis a fair bit, and then I ended up being captain of one of the teams. And I played league table tennis for about 14, 15 years, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you ever do that sort of thing now? Like obviously table tennis or anything like what in terms of hobby sport?
I haven't played for a few years. Funny enough, my mum still plays. She plays at a retirement club. And she played for about an hour retirement. It makes me laugh. We went on holiday a few years ago, and there was a table there, and there was a little tournament. People could put their name down, and I thought, well, I haven't played for years and years, and I got picked against this German bloke who absolutely thrashed me, but it was quite fun playing. And we've done a couple of holidays where if there's a table tennis table, we'll pick it up, and my wife will have a game, or when my mum and dad were there, and we went on holidays with them, and we had a few games. So yeah, I suppose that brought us together, just playing different sports, really.
And did you take that kind of sort of massively strong interest in sport, and then obviously that kind of family unit? Did you take that kind of sort of well-being and kind of positivity into your school life? Like, what were you like at school, like in kind of education terms?
Yeah, well, I never really enjoyed school much. I had a few friends. There was a sort of small group of us, but we all got bussed in from another area. Right. So I didn't enjoy school much. I was very quiet, even probably until I was about 16, 17. I mean, you wouldn't believe it now. I'm a right chatterbox. But people used to say to me, even like my nan used to come down and say, oh, he never says much. And probably until really I left school and went to college. So I was never very academic. I never tried hard. And I remember my dad always saying to me, you've got to try hard. You've got to put the effort in. And I probably did minimal effort. I never did much homework. I never really tried that hard. I didn't come out with very good grades. You going to university was never even an option. It's never even thought about, really, because I never really tried very hard. Never even did A-levels. I just left school. And it was only because I had to travel to college for about an hour that probably brought me out of my shell a bit. But it was really when I was about 17, I started working. And my mum said that was really when I sort of flourished a bit. I travelled up to London. My first job was working in a post room in a big office in Regent Street up by Oxford Circus. And that was probably when I was first came out, because I had to travel to London on my own. That was an hour each way. And being part of central London was great. There's a good vibe up there. There's a lot going on. I think that's when I came out of my shell, when I started working and got a bit more freedom, really. I think I didn't like the sort of school. It was very regimented, and I never really liked it. But now I understand why my dad always said it, because he said he never tried very hard at school, and he had to do sort of extra tutorials, and he had to do a lot of work later on. So a lot of his work, similar to me, a lot of it came when you're working. So I studied for many years when I started work. So and he said, don't do the same as me, try harder at school. But of course I didn't listen at the time. I always thought you know best, don't you? So I did a year at college, and I thought that was enough. I wanted to get out to work.
Yeah. With what you've said there, how did you actually get that first job, side? If obviously you were sort of not really doing that well educationally wise, and how did you actually find the interview, get the interview, secure it, get the job? How did all that come about?
I think my mum saw an advert. It was odd because going to central London, because I live an hour away from London, so it was odd. I'm not even I can't even remember. I think I must have seen it in the paper or something like that. Maybe that my dad used to bring the Standard home, because he worked in London for about nearly 40 years. So he used to bring the Standard home, and because he worked in London, I thought that would be good. Maybe I can go and work in London. That there wasn't a lot of local jobs around, and I'd done a couple of temping jobs. And my dad worked for a big oil company. He used to build oil refineries and design them. So he had quite a high-powered job. I mean, again, from not being very educated from his point of view, he ended up running over 100 people and running these multi-billion-pound contracts. He used to travel around the world. And so I think going to London was probably quite exciting when you're younger. And I remember temping when I was about 16, and I earned something like a ridiculous, about 50 quid a week. And I thought I was a millionaire. You don't know what to spend it all on. So I did a few weeks temping when I was about 16, just working in the post room. So I think that's probably where I got my networking from, because when I used to have to deliver all the post around. So I think you had to sort of chat to people.
Yeah.
And then I don't know where that job came from, but I was working in the post room, and to be honest, I didn't have many qualifications, and I thought maybe if I can work in the post room and meet people and network. So that's probably how I did it, really. I just got a bit more chatty and started talking to people and, you know, meeting people around the building, because it's quite a big building with hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And then they used to send me off to other offices and do that sort of stuff. So I guess you just had to naturally find your feet and be thrown in. And I remember my second job, I was put on reception quite early. And they said, right, there's the phones. And I think, I've no idea what to do. And they said, yeah, you'll soon learn. So that sort of thing was, you know, you're just thrown in at the deep end and learn on the job, really. And if you make mistakes, well, you're sort of expected to, really, but you don't make them again generally, do you? Once you've learned from the mistakes, you won't do it again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what I'm interested in what you just said there as well, though, is like, how would you? Can you remember? I mean, obviously, I mean, you're brilliant, and you are brilliant at it now, as it were. Like when you say about networking, and you know, just in case the guy, you know, some of these, anyone that might be watching this and not quite sure what that means. I mean, it's just, you know, where you're going out, going out into environments, you know, around people and kind of introducing yourself and holding conversations and driving discussions and getting to know people and exchanging contacts and that kind of thing. And building a network. That's the premise, I guess, in brief detail. And but back then again, Si, what can you remember, like at the beginning in that regard, like the beginning of your career, when what you're describing there, how did you, what was within you to kind of approach somebody that was a complete stranger to you? You know, would you approach them, and how would you typically open up a dialogue with them? And was that just something that you were just so confident in your own ability to do, or did you just think I was going to go for it?
I don't know, maybe I was quietly confident, because I was one of these people that I remember having some friends who were quite outgoing, and my sister's quite outgoing, but they were quite shy in those sort of environments, where I always had a sort of maybe an inner confidence just to get on with it. It's strangely, maybe I got that from my dad, because he was a bit like that. And I mean, even now, I don't particularly, I wouldn't say I don't always enjoy networking. I think meeting new people is quite interesting, but, you know, standing there and just having to start from scratch. But I think just ask other people about themselves and what they're up to, and get to know other people, really. That's how I've done it over the years. And in every job I've had, I've always made sure I've had connections in lots of different offices, in different departments. Because one thing you realise is, actually, if you need a favour from someone, or if there's someone in another office or someone in another department that may be able to help you one day, if you've got connections. So that's one thing I've always done from a young age, is had connections in different departments and different offices within the firms, purely for people to call on. I was probably lucky in my first few jobs that they used to sort of move you around departments and stuff as well, so you could get a bit of a flavour for different departments. You used to meet people, and I suppose in my job, when I was working the post room and you had to go out and meet people, it was like, right, you know, I worked in the basement. It was really sort of grotty, you know, underground, and we used to do things like stock taking, and we used to get sent off to places around London which were literally warehouses with blacked out windows. They were horrible places. But I suppose I just went out with the drivers. We used to go to places like Harrods and Harvey Nichols and Selfridges and some of the big places in London. And I suppose when you're 16, 17, that was all quite exciting.
Yeah.
And they introduce you to people. So I think I was using other people to get me introductions. And then, you know, you're in the background, but then they're sort of chatting to you and introducing you. And then I suppose it maybe just come naturally. Maybe I was more of a chatter than I realised, but I was very shy.
You're definitely not shy. You're brilliant. I love it. But I think in actual fact, you've made a really subtle, without maybe even realizing it, but a really subtle but a lovely sort of strategy, if you like, for you know, those that are kind of just getting started. That if you're not sure about what to say, or haven't really got an idea of how you might start a conversation with about yourself and this and the other, just flip it and ask the other person. So you know the basics are that you don't have a clue about who this person is, what they're about, where they've come from, who they are, whatever, what they're doing. So ask that. You know, that's your starter. So, hi, my name is so and so. You know, what's your name, or what do you do, or you know, what's your role here, or whatever. And there's your opener, and straight away you put it on them. So immediately they're going to start talking, and probably, I think it's fair to say, 9 times out of 10 they're going to return the favour and say, oh right, so what, you know, what's your role here, what do you do? And then, you know, the conversation's begun. So I think that's that. I mean, because some people I'm well aware of that you know, they're quite shy, they're sometimes intimidated, they're a bit anxious around new people, and you know, fundamentally conversations drive opportunities. So I think we're you know, at the foundation, as you know, Si, we're big kind of, you know, on the kind of let's create opportunities for each other, but we've got to hold a conversation and communicate and do it well. So that's a lovely introduction in that regard. So when you got started, did you kind of, I know you sort of at the kind of first couple of jobs that you've touched upon, but at that point, did you know what you kind of had planned for your future or immediate future? Did you know what you were good at and what you enjoyed doing and what you wanted to ideally get in, or were you just kind of just going with the flow?
I had no idea. I was going with the flow for several years. I think a lot of people do, to be honest. If you speak to a lot of people, they've no really idea. I think probably even in my 20s, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I think it was interesting because my first job I did probably 2 or 3 years. I literally worked in the post room, and I did some packing. So I got moved from the local department to the international department. I used to pack clothes for people, international clients. So that was quite interesting because you had to be quite precise. So I'm still quite good at wrapping Christmas presents and things now, because that was my job for months. I used to wrap these big parcels with, high-end clothes in them. I worked in a clothes shop, and these were quite expensive clothes. So you had to be really careful and wrap them nicely and present them well. So I think every job I did, whether it was, just delivering post, do it on time and efficiently, whether it was wrapping parcels. So a lot of my first 2 or 3 years were quite menial jobs, and even after that, I did a couple other jobs. I did a bit of admin work and stuff, but for several years, that's pretty much all I did, was sort of low, very low level admin work, photocopying and that type of stuff, really. And it was just building a bit of confidence.
On that, really quick, sorry to interrupt, but I want to ask you very quickly. So today, and I think this is fair to say, and this isn't criticizing anyone at all, and I mean, with goodwill intended, but I would say it's fair that many people out there, in terms of kind of first opportunities, they look online, they go on Insta, they go on, see these people out there in their lives and the flashness of it, whatever they're doing. And so actually, if there is a kind of classic starter job, whether it's packing, whether it's admin assistant, whether it's telemarketing, whatever it might be, digging holes in roads, whatever, there's a few people out there that kind of say, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to just take any kind of, for want of a better phrase, rubbish type starter role. I'd rather just claim some benefits and just sign on until I can find myself a better role or a better opportunity. What would you say to that, mate?
Well, I think it was a lot of grounding, really. I think that's where you learn a lot of the basic stuff, and you're mixing with different people, different ages, different experiences. So I was just sort of soaking it up, really. I was just learning stuff, and I was really pleased. My niece, she's in her 20s now, but I remember she started similar. She didn't get loads of qualifications, and she sort of accepted she'd have to do other stuff. So she went to America and did some work looking after disabled and disadvantaged children. She's worked in hotels and stuff like that, and bars. But again, she did the same. She sort of just tried hard and worked her way up, and I had the same view. And she signed on for a week, and I was the same. I think I was out of work once, and I signed on for a week and hated it. I was out of work for a few weeks, I hated it, and she did the same. She went down to the local job agency a few years ago because she was out of work for a few weeks, signed on once, said, I'm never going down there again. I hate it. I'd much rather work and do 3 or 4 jobs. So I think it's just experience, really. I agree. I think people go in with a very high expectation that they're going to go straight in at a management level and earn a fortune. And in fact, I think it's the grounding that builds you later on, because some of the jobs where you do, when you get the experience, you can say, well, actually, I did that job. I did the photocopy, and I worked in the post room. And if you see a lot of successful business people, they did exactly the same, didn't they? You look at people like Alan Sugar, start on a market stall and things. So often that's where you get your grounding, really. I think those first few years, I would say most people don't know what they want to do. And it was really, I'd worked for probably 3 or 4 years, and I just got fed up one year. And again, I was quite shy. How on earth I did it, I don't know. But I said to my sister, why don't we go and work abroad for a while? So we basically said to my mum, Dad, right, we're packing up our jobs. My sister was only 17 as well. We said, we're packing up our jobs and we're going to go work in Tenerife. And they went, really? And we went, yep. So we literally just booked a flight and went over there, and we worked there for the summer. Then I came back and I temped for a while because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And by that time I was about 21. And I got a temping job and I didn't really enjoy it. I was drifting around, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then the following year I did the same. I packed up and went myself over to Corfu. And I spent the summer in Corfu. And I said to my sister, she still stayed in Tenerife, so I'd come back on my own. She stayed in Tenerife. And I called her from Corfu and said, look, I think you'd really like it over here. She still lives there now. And that was like, nearly 30 years ago. She speaks fluent Greek and still lives in Greece. So yeah, and her daughter grew up a lot of time in Greece. She has got a place over here as well, but yeah, she lives in Corfu now and loves it. So it was that sort of little break that, me just thinking, oh, I'm just fed up, I'll go and work abroad to get a bit more experience. And again, I was just bumming around with it. I did a bit of DJing, did work in bars and
Did you? I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that.
Only for a couple of weeks. It was only like a little bar thing.
I can't believe you just let that out, Simon. I'm not going to let that go. Next time I see you in person, that's it. Get you on the decks. That what you've just said there is absolutely brilliant. I love that. And I mean, myself included, you know, and I know many others have done the same. That, you know, I mean, we had a slightly different kind of starting point, I guess. Obviously, with me, I was trying to be a footballer, and you know, I was playing 6-7 days a week and represented county district and everything else, and I got picked up at schoolboy level for Millwall and this, that, and the other. And I was, you know, as you know, mate, sort of Mill, Gillingham, and Cheltenham, my clubs, and everyone around me all saying I was going to make it and this, that, and the other. And then ultimately got an injury, fell out and didn't make it, unfortunately, and missed out on my pro contract. And but the point I want to raise is similarly in what you're saying. So, you know, rather than, and I could have maybe reasonably, arguably had the attitude of, well, my mind is, oh, well, I was going to be a pro footballer, so I'm not going to do some kind of random little admin job or whatever it might be. I'm going to wait until I get a management role now because I can't be a footballer or whatever. But not that at all. I needed a job, right? And I needed to earn money. I wanted to get out and be independent. So I just literally, it's really similar to you. I just saw an ad. I mean, obviously, I know it's all online now, but back in the day, you know, an advert in the paper, just, you know, some kind of recruitment firm, and I thought, well, I'll give that a go. I love meeting people like you, love meeting people. Recruitment's very people centric, so I went down, had the interview, and just took the job, got the job offer, and started at basically like a sort of admin type role. It was very much like assisting the recruitment consultants as a team, and just made my way and just got on with it and started earning some money. And, you know, but it's like what you said, the fact of the matter is, rather than, and I'm not criticizing anyone that's watching this, you know, who do claim and this, that, and the other, and, you know, it might be a sort of thing that you need to do at this moment in time. But the point, simply what we're trying, I guess, make here is, if you take a role, and if it is at a ground level, it's a starting point, but it's your application towards that. You know, if you view it in a way of, right, I'm going to make the most of this and get myself about this place, you know, and get to introduce myself to people. I mean, like you, Si, I mean, I was putting myself about the floor all over the place. I was going up to introduce myself to, you know, senior recruitment consultants, people that are earning big money in the office, just introduce myself, you know, saying, hi, I'm Keith, you know, I'm this, that, and the other. I'm supporting your team ultimately, you know, albeit they're up here and then their team and then their team and their team. And this is the team I'm supporting. But I just said, I'm supporting your teams. So I just sort of kind of blagged it a little bit. I'm not really supporting your team at all because I'm talking like teams down here, but then they're quite interested. That, oh, well, thank you very much, sort of thing. And then and then you've got a conversation with a top man in the company, sort of thing. Yeah. So and that's how you get noticed. And if you put yourself about in the right way, and all of a sudden, you know, if you do well by the role, and, you know, it's almost like that brand of me. If you do really well at the given opportunity you've got, people then start to notice that, and, oh, that Keith is always really helpful, go and ask Keith, or whatever it might be. And then suddenly people are talking about you, and if an opportunity comes along, oh, Keith might be up for that, he might be good for that, and then all of a sudden you just create an opportunity out yourself just through pure attitude.
I think that's exactly what I did, and I did exactly the same. It was just a bit chatting to people, being helpful, being friendly. People would ask you to do stuff, and just do it quickly and to the best of your ability. And then, I remember you asked me to come along to see some of your, one of the first lot of students, actually, because I've known you for about 5 years now. It was just after your first West Ham one. And the following year you did at K Sports, and you asked me to come along and do the interview day. And I really enjoyed that. And I mean, putting myself back in the, you know, with the sort of youngsters and sort of doing the sort of mock interviews and stuff, you could really see the difference. People that had been there a few weeks and were happy to come over and chat and were quite chatty, and other people that were really shy. You might remember there was one lad who was really shy and didn't want to come over. You said to him to come over and speak to me, and he just turned his back and wouldn't come over. And everyone else went off, and he sat on his own. And then a couple of times he looked over at me, and then eventually he sort of got up and walked over, and we had a nice chat. And there was one young girl who was excellent. And, you know, again, you can get false impressions, can't you? Because, you know, she was sort of studying to become a lawyer, I think. And you think, well, you know, I mean, she's really pushed on. She's really chatty. So I think you're a good example, actually, because I remember when I first met you, we were at a networking event over in Maidstone, and everyone else was suited and booted, and you come along in a tracksuit, and someone said, oh, Keith's really nice, go and have a chat with him. And I thought, well, two things. One, you stood out because you're in a tracksuit and everyone else was suited and booted.
Couldn't afford a suit, mate. Couldn't afford a suit.
Yeah, look at him coming along in a tracksuit. But also I thought, well, you're interested in football, and I like football. So actually, finding a common ground sometimes. So if you're not got anything to talk about, often you'll find, especially blokes, talk about football or holidays or something. It's just something you've got a bit of an interest in. That usually starts off the conversation, doesn't it? Is, do you like football? Do you like sport? What do you like? Do you play or do you watch? That type of thing, really. So but you stood out, and so I come and chatted to you, and we've always got on well ever since. But that was partly because you stood out in that crowd, because you had the football background, and I thought, well, if nothing else, I'll meet someone who likes football. What's the worst that can happen?
I really appreciate that, mate. I think ultimately, again, for people that might sort of be feeling a little bit vulnerable and this, that, and at this sort of time of, I think it's just, you really try and be true to yourself, and don't sort of try and be someone that you're not, and look at you in his strengths, and look at you in a sort of passion, and as we got a big sort of why culture about the foundation, about why we do what we do, and if you've got that sense of purpose in terms of what you want to achieve, what you want to go after, and stay true to that, and then be firm on it, be sort of hold yourself confident in that circle, and i.e. again, what I will say is that, if you've got an interview, don't turn up in a blooming tracksuit unless it's for a coaching role, as an example. You play the role, but in that regard, it was kind of a networking thing. Well, I'm there to represent a football-led charity, so for me, it makes sense that I'm in a tracksuit. Others, they might look at that, and actually, you were generous. I mean, others might have thought in that room, God, look at him, he's in a bloody tracksuit, what's all that about? But that's cool. But then if they then suddenly start working the room and or come up to me and then understand what I'm then doing as a job, immediately their perception changes. And it's really, really interesting, that paradigm shift you could have, that your instant first impression, you make that judgment call, but somebody standing right alongside you can look at that same individual and think completely different. So you've looked at me and thought, oh, he's interesting, he must be into football, and someone else stood right next to you, Simon, might have thought, cool, what an absolute chancer, this is a business networking meeting, he's turned up in a tracksuit, what an idiot. It's really interesting, isn't it? With two guys in side by side can have exactly like the same view, but a completely different view and opinion of it. And I think it's always challenging perceptions, and again, that's why you want to sort of be confident in your own kind of role, abilities, and what you're about, and then drive those discussions, and change people's perceptions where it needs to be done. I want to sort of fast forward actually in this regard, because with that kind of grounding, what you've said about it, it's been brilliant to kind of learn a bit about that. More so now present, I mean, I just touched upon it just now with lockdown. I think, we've, as a nation, I think it's fair to say generally have struggled. It's been a very challenging period. I think there was there's a friend of mine who I now know, Steve. We talked about it just before we went live, Steve Salis. And he said to me that there was a stat going around that, and he wasn't sure where it's come from, but 1 in 4 people in this country now have mental health issues. But he challenged that, and he said he thinks it's a nonsense. He said it's 1 in 1. Every single person in the country has mental health issues, on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 being you're actually really in control and it's generally okay. 10, you're really struggling with it. And I think that's actually probably fair, because I think every one of us has been touched in some way, and we've gone through challenges and stresses and circumstances that we've had to come through. Some a lot more tough and strenuous than others. But if you don't mind, Simon, with you, mate, I mean, in the last year or so that it's been, I mean, how did you react, first of all, when it first came about, March last year? And then, how did you kind of go through the motions, and what, did you have any particular real challenges, and how did you maybe get through them?
Yeah, well, we were told, we got a call. So, I mean, I've always mainly been used to working in offices, really. I've sort of 30 years of work in offices. So I've worked from home occasionally, but it wasn't that common. And then we got called on a Sunday night to say, right, everyone work from home for 2 days. And we all went, I've got meetings tomorrow, I've got to do printing and stuff. And so everyone was kicking off, and they said, no, you're not allowed in office. We're shutting office for 2 days. And we thought, so what they were doing, they were testing us to see how resilient we were. Did we have laptops? Did we have phones that we could use? How could we cope at home? And some people cope better than others, because I think some advisors, for example, we could work from home, and other people, certainly some of the administrators and stuff, really struggled. They didn't have the setup at home that be able to do it, or they didn't have the environment, maybe young kids running around and stuff like that. So at the time they said, and so that worked for 2 days, that sort of the resilience in could we cope? And then on the Thursday they said, right, we're not good. It was just about a week before the announcement about the lockdown. I think our firm could see it coming. So they said, right, everyone on Thursday afternoon, right, you're all going home this afternoon and don't come back in the office probably for a few weeks. And we all laughed and went, we'll probably see you in 3 or 4 weeks. And we've not been back now for 13 months. So I think early on, I mean, I'd only just started a new job then as well. I'd only been there a couple of months. So some of my colleagues I'd only met a few times. So working from home, so I've had to adapt. But actually, it's been beneficial for me, I think, because I've had to find different ways of working. You know, we do much more online now. I think we weren't as good as with technology as we probably could have been. Clients have realised it's quite easy. I've spoken to a number of clients recently who said, "Oh, I'd much rather just ring up for an hour and do a Zoom call or a Teams meeting than you drive for 2 hours to see me." You know, and I think we're always happy to get in the car and drive an hour, park somewhere, go and see someone. You know, you might spend half a day out seeing someone. Now you can ring up an hour conversation and it's done. And so I think people realise that they don't have to spend 2 hours in the car and trying to find somewhere to park. You know, you and I are on some networking events where you can just dial in when it starts. As soon as it finishes, you get back on with your work. And you don't have to think about driving somewhere, parking, you know, getting there early, you know, are you going to be late, stuck in traffic? So I think we've all adapted, and I've done some webinars, for example. So I did a webinar a few weeks ago for for the next generation. And interestingly, I had about 60 people join, and I did an hour of just looking at younger people and what sort of, you know, what would have interested me, giving them financial advice when I was younger. What sort of things could I learn? And a few people approached me afterwards and said, thanks, they've never seen anything aimed at that generation, really. So I was aiming at the sort of maybe, you know, late teens to sort of 20s, really, sort of starting your career. And a few people said, no one's ever really done that, because most people, I think, aim at the sort of, you know, 50 plus, you know, people with some money, you know, near retirement and post-retirement. But not many people, because I think people perceive that, you know, the teens and 20s don't have much money, so they're not really worth aiming at. But I was really pleased with the feedback, and I've had about half a dozen advisors around the country in our company, from Bournemouth up to Leeds and Manchester, who contacted me and said, oh, I really liked your webinar. We want to do something locally as well, you know, because we've got contacts. And these were people mainly in their 20s and 30s themselves. Brilliant. And said, we want to run that for people of our age, really. Yeah. So I'd already run it by a couple of people of that generation to say, you know, does this appeal to you? Is what I'm talking about of interest to you? And they said, oh no, tweak this and add this and take that away. So again, you know, it was targeted at the right people. So getting the messages out to the right people. When I've done quite a few webinars now for solicitors and barristers and stuff, and if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago would I've done it, I'd have said absolutely no way. I'm not particularly brilliant at technology. I've never heard of even Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom before lockdown. You know, and all of a sudden now we're on it for hours every day. Yeah, so it's been an interesting change around, but it's just mindset, isn't it? Really, you have to adapt.
It is exactly that, and just in case people are unaware of Tilney, you know, there might be just only a few, but obviously Tilney is very well known generally. But what is your actual role, and what does Tilney do, Simon?
So I'm a chartered financial advisor, and with Tilney Smith and Williamson, we bought a company called Smith and Williamson last year. So we're split. We're half financial advisors and half sort of investment managers and business advisors. We've got about 3,000 staff around the UK, all dotted around the UK. So I've been given advice. I've been in the sort of insurance and financial services for about 30 years now, and I've been giving advice to clients for about 20 years. So I advise individuals and businesses on but basically, you know, where are they now and what does their future look like? What goals are they trying to achieve? You know, do they want a nice retirement? Do they want a bigger house? That type of stuff. So what's their goal? You know, where are they? And then how do we get there, really? So I suppose it's a bit like you, really, isn't it? You're starting from, you know, where are you now? Where do you want to get to? And then how do we build that? How do we bridge that gap between, you know, where you are now and where you want to get to? So I suppose probably completely different environments, but you're doing something similar, really. You're trying to, you know, look at where someone wants to get to, and then how do they achieve it?
It is literally like you were with me yesterday. So yeah, I mean, honestly, yesterday I was at our taster session for our new program with Sheffield United, and it was literally what you just said there. You did, and you know, I know you didn't know this, and just to be clear, everyone, what Simon did not know this, but part of the session we had was the topic was I am here because, and it was basically kind of why these guys had turned up in the first place and what they wanted to get out of the program, where they were at now, and what they wanted to kind of achieve and get out of this program over the coming 10 weeks. So it's exactly what you've just described there. I mean, and in that regard, then you just touched on, like, you know, for other people that you advise, you know, their goals and aspirations, where they want to go. What about you? I mean, as we come towards the end of the interview now, and it's been brilliant, really lovely to see you again. But in that regard, Simon, what kind of gets you out of bed? I mean, it's almost like my signature question on this podcast show. So, what is your personal purpose? What gets you out of bed each morning, and what do you want to go and achieve over the coming year?
I suppose helping other people. I mean, I've enjoyed. I'm doing another webinar in 2 weeks' time as well, so it'll be my third in the last couple of months. And I suppose educating people as well. So I mean, I've got a number of clients I've looked after for 10 or 15 years, and I just like being part of their life as well. You get to know them well. You get to know their family and their background, and I suppose it's helping people really. Ultimately, that's what I've always enjoyed doing. Is you can talk about pensions and investments and stuff. That's just really a vehicle of how to get somewhere. Really, but it's looking at, I think I've had a couple of people who said, you really changed my life, and you don't appreciate it, but you maybe told them something that was really key to them. I mean, one guy I remember who could have retired, and he nearly didn't, but the rules were going to change, and he would have had to wait 5 years before he retired. And even many years later, he said to me, you changed my life. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, if you hadn't given me that advice then, and I literally had about 3 weeks to decide whether to retire or not, it completely changed my life. And so I think we don't appreciate quite how much of a difference you can sometimes make to people's lives. And I spoke to a family recently, and I saved them about £200,000 in tax. And those sort of things, you're completely changing people's lives, because that will go on to the next generation of their children and grandchildren. They'll benefit from that. So yeah, it's changing people's lives, I think. I enjoy. And so I'm doing business development as well. So I'm also a member of Resolution, so helping people who getting divorced and separating, really sort of helping them with their finances, working with solicitors and barristers to give a fair split to people, really. I mean, going through divorce is a challenging time for people, so it's just being fair and helping them out, really, and trying to be balanced and trying to look objectively at it from an outsider's point of view and saying, well, what's fair? People get involved in their own little sort of world, don't they? And they battle over small things. And sometimes you've got to look at the bigger picture and say, you've got to take a step back and say, would you give yourself that advice if you were looking at it from outside? And often they're saying, no, that's silly, really, isn't it? So yeah, it's just being sensible, really, and taking a sort of an outsider's point of view.
Is but in kind of a key takeaway measure, the fact that your purpose is ultimately to help other people and frankly change their lives is an unbelievable purpose. And I've not planted this on purpose, but you touched upon it as well. But look, I've got a book there, Mindset is Everything. That but no, honestly, Simon, that is what a lovely way to finish. I mean, it's been really fantastic, and I also always love catching up with you. And I'm sure we'll see each other in person again very, very soon. And but for everyone watching this, I hope it's been really, really educational and just shows you what you can do. Simon here, ultimately admitted that he didn't really enjoy school, didn't really engage with it, didn't really do that well, didn't really get much qualifications about him, and then sort of got the drive to get out and just find something, get started somehow, somewhere, took the role and opportunity, then put himself about and started asking questions, asking sort of probing questions, getting to know people, and then built that networking capability about himself, and then drove other opportunities that came his way. And ultimately now, look what he's just described. Your role at Tilney, Simon, is fantastic, and you do an exceptional job there. And frankly, the guys are really lucky to have you, and you're a great guy and a massive supporter of street soccer. And I really want to thank you again publicly for that. How can just to end it, I mean, how can people reach out to you, Simon, if you didn't mind? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so my email is simon.o'connell without the apostrophe, OCONNELL @tilney.co.uk, or mobile is 07842 605 608.
Brilliant stuff. We'll if with your blessing, we'll drop that into the link when we put this on the channels. But Simon, thank you, mate. I really and guys, Simon has to go because he's that busy. We're doing this on a slightly earlier schedule, albeit this is live when you see it. But in terms of this is a pre-recording, so Simon's got a call literally about 2 minutes ago, so he's got to go. But it's really lovely to meet you again, mate. Lovely to see you, and thanks so much for your time. This has been the Street Soccer United podcast with Simon O'Connell of the Tilney Group. Thanks so much, mate.
Thank you. Bye.